So, students, you all know very well that we have started with the first semester syllabus. I did tell you about the curriculum. You have grammar, prose, poetry, drama, soft skills, and all these. And accordingly, we have started with the first lesson, prose, and we have finished the curve in the sky. And now we are going to do the second one, that is happy people. Let us see who is the writer of this. William Ralph King is the writer and was born in the year 1816. He was a renowned clergyman, scholar, and social critic. He studied and worked in distinguished colleges in Oxford and Cambridge. He happened to work in distinguished colleges in Oxford and Cambridge. He has worked in very reputed colleges, popular colleges in Oxford and Cambridge. He was a prolific writer and was known for his views on philosophy and Christian mysticism. So he used to write much. He's famous for his literary writing, and he was well versed with the mystic elements in Christianity also. His writings were popular and had an impact in his time. His writings were very popular and they had an impact during his time. That is, people were influenced by his writings. Some of his ideas remain relevant and are extremely valuable for all generations. So some of his ideas are so relevant that even today you can consider that they are very good and are extremely valuable for all generations. It's not timeless facts. These are timeless facts, timeless things. They are relevant even today and they are very valuable for all generations. His craftsmanship in writing is impressive and many of his sayings are used as popular quotations. Now his craftsmanship in writing is impressive. He writes in a very impressive manner and many of his sayings are used as popular quotations. He writes in such a manner that all his sayings are very popular and they are like quotations. They are used even as quotations. In Happy People, William India explores the question of what makes people happy. So he is exploring the question, what actually is that which makes people happy? How can people be happy? And who are considered to be happy people? Whom can we consider as happy people? He writes that some consider the young as the happiest, others opine that old age is when people are happy and content. So some people say that the young people are happy, the young and children who are happy because they do not have any responsibility. Whereas others say that no, the old people are happy because they don't have any, they already finished their responsibilities, like they are free. They are happy as well as satisfied. Referring to the endless discussion on whether the state of being unmarried or married or whether religion and charity has any bearing on a person's happiness, Inge makes his famous statement. Now he says that is it the state of marriage that makes you happy, or is it the state of not marrying that makes you happy? So if you are married, if the person is single, does it mean that he will be happy? If the person is married, does it mean that he has invited the problems? Or whether religion and charity has any bearing on a person's happiness. So in which religion is he there? Does it matter? And his way of giving charity. Does it matter? Inge makes this famous statement: the happiest people seem to be those who have no particular cause for being happy. And he says this famous statement like, you don't need to search for any reason for being happy. The happiest people seem to be those who have no particular cause for being happy. So they may not have any particular cause for being happy. They are just like that. That is, they are always happy. Except the fact that they are souls. That is, they are always happy. Their innate quality itself is like that. They are always happy. His essay suggests that faith and trust in God can enhance one's state of happiness. His trust in God, faith as well as our trust in God will definitely give us happiness. That is what he says. He says that, okay, you may have a lot of variations, but ultimately trust in God and the faith, they are very important. So when we say happy people, he has given us certain pre-reading questions. What, in your opinion, are the things that make one happy? When we just discuss these questions, it will take you directly to the lesson. What, in your opinion, are the things that make one happy? When can anyone be really happy? What are the things that really make anyone happy? Do you know anyone who is always happy or always sad? What is the reason for their contentment or depression? So, do you know somebody who is always happy and somebody who is always sad? What is the reason for their contentment or depression? So, how is it possible that they are satisfied? How is it possible that they are depressed still? If you are granted one wish, what would you ask for? He says, if at all you are given, you are granted one wish, then what is it that you ask for? That is, what is it that you generally ask? For which do you give the priority? The wise man who wrote the so-called Proverbs of Solomon says, the heart knoweth its own bitterness, and a stranger doth not intermeddle with its joy. We really know, we really know, we really know the wise man who wrote the so-called Proverbs of Solomon. He says that the heart knoweth its own bitterness, and a stranger doth not intermeddle. Stranger doth not intermeddle with its joy. We really know very well that how is it possible that some people give one definition and the others give the other definition. The heart knoweth its own bitterness, and a stranger doth not intermeddle with its joy. The heart knows its bitterness, and a stranger doth not intermeddle with its joy. The stranger does not let the stranger not intermeddle with its joy. We really know very little about the people whom we meet. So he says that the heart knoweth its own bitterness, and the stranger doth not intermeddle with its joy. The heart knoweth its own bitterness in the sense we know very well, if at all we are really bitter, we know very well that we are bitter. Then a stranger need not come and intervene, and he need not say, are you not happy, or are you having some problem, or something like that. We really know very little about the people whom we meet. This says that we really know very little about the people whom we meet. We meet so many people, but we do not really know about them. We simply see them and wish them. We see their faces, which are not much more than masks. We see their faces, they are not much more than masks. In the sense, what he wishes to say is, we know people, we see people, we wish them, we talk to them, and we do all sorts of things. But how they appear, how we appear in front of others, how others appear in front of us, it's only a kind of pretension. That is, the faces are mere masks, because the face does not really indicate does not really indicate does not really indicate what actually that person feels. So they are merely wearing the masks. They are merely wearing the masks. They are not telling us the reality. They are not telling us the reality. They are not telling us the reality. Robert Browning thanks God that the meanest of his creatures has two soul sides, one to face the world, one to face the world with, one to show a woman when he loves her. And he says that we see their faces, which are now much more than moss, but we cannot read their hearts. We see the people and what expressions they wear on the face, they are merely masks, because we can't read their hearts. We don't read their hearts, we merely meet them, that's all. Robert Browning thanks God that the meanest of his creatures has two soul sides, one to face the world with, one to show a woman when he loves her. So he says, uh, creature has got, every tiniest creature also has got two soul sides. One is to face the world. However you are, whatever you are, you need to face the world. With one to show a woman when he loves her, and the other one is when he is with the family. It is only in the intimacy of family life or in that rare thing, a perfect friendship, that the veil is partially drawn aside. Now, it is only in the intimacy of family life. That is when you are very intimate, when you are very close in family life, or in that rare thing, a perfect friendship, or maybe when there is a perfect friendship, that the veil is partially drawn aside. That is, partially you will draw it aside. And even then, we do not lay bare our hearts entirely. Now, even at that time, also, we will not lay our hearts aside barely. That is, we will not totally open up our hearts. Still, we try to pretend and still we try to say, okay, no, nothing like that, I'm fine, and all these things. Who are really the happiest people? Now comes the question. Who are really the happiest people? Whom can we consider as the happiest people? It is odd that we have no answer ready for with most of us, happiness is our being's end and aim. Happiness is our end and aim. Most of us, happiness is our end and aim. End and aim in the sense, always when somebody asks us directly, whom can you say to be the happiest people? Then there is no ready answer, because always we are in search for happiness. Never do we agree that we are happy. We say, no, 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 I want this, I have to go there, I have to complete this and all this. Then only we are happy. Our being's end and aim. It's the end of our being as well as the aim always remains the same. We are sometimes in doubt whether our own balance is on the right side or the wrong. Now, sometimes it appears as if our own balance is on the right side or the wrong side. Is it on the right or on the wrong? Looking back, I think I can separate the years when I was happy and those when I was unhappy. Now, he says that he can as well separate the years very clearly. Those years when he was happy and those when he was unhappy. If at all he was unhappy, why was he unhappy? And when he was happy, he can say some 10 years he was happy, some 5 years he was unhappy, or something like that. He says very well he can bifurcate. But perhaps at the time I should have judged it differently. We are never either so happy or so miserable as we suppose ourselves to be. He says now at that time can say like that. But in those years when he says that he was happy or he was miserable, maybe he was having some other view. He would have judged it in a different manner. Now he says that these years I was happy, these years I was unhappy. But if at all he was asked this question in those days, then maybe he would not have said like that. We are never either so happy or so miserable. So this is the fact. He says, in fact, we are never either so happy or never miserable, as we suppose ourselves to be. The successful man generally tells us that he was the happiest while he was still struggling. Now, the successful man generally tells us that he was the happiest while he was still struggling for his success. So he says that he was still struggling for his success, but still he says he was happiest while he was still struggling for his success, or sometimes before he discovered that an ambitious career was open to him. So sometimes when he discovers that when an ambitious career was open to him or something like that, he was discovering just at that time. Sometimes before he discovered that an ambitious career was open to him. As a rule, the game of life is worth playing, but the struggle is the prize. So always we can say that the game of life is worth fighting. We can always go on with that. But the struggle is the prize. It is the struggle which is the prize. It is generally supposed that the young are happier than the old. So if you generally ask somebody, people say that the young are happier than the old. But if you ask the young people, they say, no, 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 we are not happy. This seems to me very doubtful. So he says, it appears to be a bit doubtful. Young people are often very unhappy, torn by conflicting elements in their characters. So we see that young people are always unhappy because they have conflicting elements in their mind, which after a time come to some kind of mutual understanding. So after some time they'll come to a mutual understanding. Robert Browning boldly claims that old age is the best of life, and some old people agree with him. So Robert Browning says it's not the young age that is happy, but the old age which is actually happy. And some old people, it seems, they do agree that yes, of course, in old age we are happy. The married are supposed to be happier than the single. And he says that the married people are really happier than the single. They are certainly less prone to commit suicide. So the married people do not commit suicide so easily. But suicide is not a very good test, and it has been pointed out that married people with no children are not much less suicidally inclined than bachelors and spinsters. So those who are unmarried and those who are married but do not have children, they are prone to such kind of suicides. Still, as a rule, marriage is probably the happiest state. They say still, as a rule, marriage is really considered as the happiest state. It all depends on whether the pair are well matched, and very bad choices are, I think, the exception. So it is only there whether the pair is well matched or not. And if the choice is very bad, then naturally you can't have the exception. So if the choices are bad, then they are really not correct. On the whole, the happiest people seem to be those who have no particular cause for being happy, except the fact that they are so. A good reason, no doubt. So generally, so let us not probe deeply into that. The happiest people are those who are always happy and they don't find reasons for being happy. And yes, I should not choose a naturally contented temperament as my first request from a fairy godmother. So let us not say that I'll choose some temperament, a kind of contented temperament as my first request from a fairy godmother. It would be unfortunate if I said I wish to be the happiest man in England and promptly found myself locked up in an asylum, a cheerful lunatic who believed himself to be the emperor of China. See what a good kind of saying this is. Now he says if the fairy godmother comes and if you say that I want to be the happiest person in London, who could be the happiest person? Now if it is said like that and if he is put in an asylum where mad people live, so the mad people in their madness, they believe that he is the emperor of China or the emperor of the entire world. And if you feel yourself to be like that, then naturally you're the happiest person because you don't know any kind of unhappiness around you. For all we know to the contrary, the happiest man in England will be a madman, and none of us would wish to change places with him. So naturally, maybe the madman is the happiest person, and nobody really wants to exchange place with such madman. And even if the always cheerful person is perfectly sane, he is without the splendid spur which most men need if they are to do much with their lives. So if they do not have the cheerful person is perfectly sane, even if he is very sane and very correct, he is not mad. None of us would wish to change places with him, of course, fine. He is without the splendid spur which most men need if they are to do much with their lives. So he may be perfectly sane, but he may not be having that splendid spur, that kind of brightness in the life in order to make life very correct in the society. George Borrow, the author of Lavengro, then addresses those who suffer from depression. He is addressing those people who are suffering from depression. How dost thou know that this dark principle is not thy best friend? So one should first know that this dark principle of depression is not the best friend. It may be the mother of wisdom and great works. It is indeed of the horror of the night which makes a pilgrim hasten on his way. So it is a kind of horror of the night which will make you go speedily towards the depression. Thou wouldst be joyous, wouldst thou? Then be a fool. If at all you are not going to be joyous, be a fool. What great work! What great work! was ever the result of joy, the funny one. So, what great work is ever result of joy? Funny one. Who have been the wise ones, the mighty ones, the conquering ones of the earth, the joyous? I believe it not. So, it may not be that. It's not. It's not the. It's not the people who are the mighty ones, the conquering ones of the earth, the joyous. I believe it or not. What could be the result of joy? The anyone who have been the wise ones, the mighty ones, the conquering ones of the earth, the joyous, I believe it not. So who might be the happy one? Those who are very wise, those who are very mighty and powerful, or those who are conquering the earth, the entire earth. Can we consider them to be joyous? So he says, I believe it not. So he says, neither the conquering ones, neither the mighty ones, neither the happy ones, neither the wise ones are happy. So we'll continue the lesson. Thank you.